Hi, my name's Seth, and I've been teaching the GMAT with test crackers for a long time now. I'm doing this series on the 10 toughest problems in the problem-solving section of the latest official guide because these problems contain within them a lot of the tools that you're going to need to solve all the problems that GMAT can throw at you, and because they contain the principles that will guide your use of those. And that's what I want you to take away from these. We're moving to this one now. The price per share of stock X increased by K%, and the earnings per share of stock X increased by M%, where K is greater than M. By what percent did the ratio of price per share to earnings per share increase in terms of K and M? Read it through, try to identify what kind of structure is going to help you solve this problem. And the very first words tell me what I need to do: last year. Because the minute I hear about multiple time periods, I'm thinking table. Last year, these things increased. And so there's some old value and there's some new value, and I've got two columns for a table. Next thing, what am I talking about? Well, price per share and earnings per share. So I'm going to put price per share and I'm going to put earnings per share into my table. And they increased by K and M%. Price per share by K, earnings per share by M, where K is greater than M. So I write that out. By what percent did the ratio change? Okay, so I've got price per share, earnings per share. I also need to know my ratio. So that all goes into my table, and I'm looking for a percent change. Note the two steps I've been through already. I read the problem, I thought, oh, this is a table. I figured out what goes in the table and just labeled it, but my table's completely empty still. Only now I'm going to start putting things into that table. And in terms of what goes in this table, what I want is to show that the old and new values are going to change in some way to make the ratio relatively easy to calculate a percent change in. But I'm not going to use variables in here. I'm going to map out a scenario that sort of tells me values for variables that's easy to work with. So let's run through this. I've got some old price per share and earnings per share that are going to increase by some percent, right? K% and M%. And so the easiest old values I know about are 100 when I'm dealing with a percent. And I can make up whatever I want here. Because it doesn't tell us what the old prices were, it just tells us the percent change, so it can't matter. In that case, the ratio is 100 to 100, or just 1, and I'm happy because that seems like an easy ratio to work with. Before I come up with new values, and before I come up with K and M, I want to keep thinking, I'm really looking for a percent change here. And so if I have a 1 as my old ratio, I want a new ratio that's really nice to work with. Here's where you could go wrong otherwise. If we were like, let's say 10% and 5%, then we'd get 110 and 105, and then our new ratio would be 110 over 105. And I would want to not do any more math because that seems annoying to calculate the percent change here. That seems annoying to work with. So I'm instead going to work backwards from an easy ratio. I'm going to say, let's just make this 2. Let's just try and make the ratio 2 so that rather than 100 to 100, it's going to be double, where this is double that. So I'm thinking, let's just make this a relatively simple. Let's go from 100 to 200 here, and then let's go from 100 to double that, or 400 here. That's going to be 400 over 200, which is the same as this new ratio of 2. So then I think, well, what was my percent change? 100 to 200 is a 100% change. M% equals 100%. M just equals 100. We could calculate that using our percent change formula, difference over original times 100, right? So the difference here is going to be 200 minus 100 over the original, which is the older number, is 100. And so that's just going to be 100 over 100, which of course just becomes 1, times 100 gets us a 100% increase. We can do the same thing here if you don't see that on your own. 400 minus 100 gets us 300, all over 100. And then we multiply that by 100. So difference over original times 100, well, the hundreds cancel. That means K% is going to be a 300% increase, or in other words, K just equals 300. So now we've backed into values for K and M that aren't too bad to work with, like 100 and 300. We just need to calculate percent change, and we've got a pretty easy number to work with, and we've got the same formula, difference over original times 100. So we're just saying 2 minus 1 over 1, which of course equals 1 over 1, right? Times 100. So we're saying we have a target of 100. We want a 100% change here when K and M are 300 and 100. That's setting up this problem such that we have a goal that we're seeking, and we have values to input to find it. Now our final step is simply checking all the answer choices for a match. Choice A says K over M, in this case 300 over 100. That's not going to be 100, forget about it. Check out choice B. B says K minus M. Once again, I don't need a lot of thought to know that this is not going to be 100. So let's not worry about what it is. C. This gets a bit more complicated. 100 times K minus M. Well, K minus M is 300 minus 100. And all that is on top of 100 plus K. And so that's 100 plus 300. To simplify this, 300 minus 100 is 200. And 100 plus 300 is just going to be 400. And then I could reduce. 200 goes into 400 two times. This is 100 over 2. And so that's going to equal 50. That's not the 100 that I'm looking for. It is not choice C. Let's try D. D says same numerator, which we've already figured out is just 100 times 200. And check for these repeats to save yourself math. New denominator, 100 plus M. Well, M is 100. So now we get 100 plus 100 down here, or in other words, just 200. The 200s cancel. Lo and behold, that's a match. I can't stop here. And this is one annoying thing about making up values. Just because when you choose risky numbers, when you use the same values that you might want other places, there's a potential that more than one answer will match. We've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that A, B, and C are not the right answer. We've proven that D is a potential answer. But there's bad luck that comes up once in a while where E might match too. We need to confirm that E is not also a match. And in this case, once again, we see same numerator, right? What is that? 100 times K minus M. But the denominator has changed. It's no longer just 100 plus 100. It's 100 plus 100 plus 300. And so you can easily say, wait a minute, if the numerator is the same, but the denominator has an extra 300 in it, that will not produce the same result. And D is not just a potential answer, it is the answer. And we're done with that. That's all we need to do on this one. Okay, let's talk about this. It's what I would sort of think of as about as far down the path of a certain type of problem as you'll see on the GMAT. There's 4 or 5 of these that are of similar complexity out there. Some in official materials, some that I've seen from other sources. But the things they have in common, right? First of all is table. Tables are one of the most flexible and useful structures that you can use when you're doing GMAT problems. Anytime you have time periods, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like this year and last year, like April, May, and June, you know, any of those things, think table. And other times too. Anytime you've got 2 categories, right? Like, you know, say we say mountain bikes and road bikes. Anytime you've got something like that could be a very useful tool to organize. Second tip, right? And we saw this already. Get your rows and columns. Once you have a table, think about rows and columns before you put anything in. Third tip, values, not variables. Right? We could have put in all kinds of variables, like this is 100 plus K over 100 times 100 or something like that, even once we've made up 100. Or we could have even said, you know, this was M, and this was, you know, some long, right? This is M, this would be M plus K over 100 times M or something. It's a mess. We don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. We don't want to do a bunch of math using variables. We want to use actual values. And by making up variables as values, we saved all that math. Next tip, right? Look ahead when you make up. we made up values that got us to this nice, easy to work with ratio of 2. And if we'd chosen other values, it might have made our life harder rather than easier. We also made sure we got values for K and M, like 100 and 300, that weren't that bad when we had to plug them back into answer choices. And the final tip I'll make here, remember, is note when you can save effort in checking for a match. Why do I say that? Because when we had K minus M, we knew that wasn't going to work. When we had 100 times K minus M in a bunch of different answer choices, we knew we could repeat that value. We didn't need to calculate it again every time. And also note how I never got to values on a lot of these. I didn't get to some big thing that I calculated. And this is one of the more important principles here in terms of GMAT, which is save multiplication for the end. Another way to do it is just RBM, which is reduce before you multiply. And another way to think about it is just break it apart before you put it together. Keeping things in pieces is often easier, is what will save you a lot of the long math that isn't worth doing in an exam like the GMAT, where you're not using a calculator and you have to do these calculations yourself. Okay, thank you for checking this out. This is one of my 10 toughest problem-solving problems from the latest official guide. And I'm doing this for you because I think there's a lot of useful tools when you see these problems, and I want you to have those tools and be familiar with them. Whether this problem is one you see on the GMAT, not that likely, but seeing problems that use the same techniques is very likely. If you like this video and you want more of these explanations, like and subscribe to this channel to encourage us to keep these coming for you, and so that you know when they happen. Check out our website, testcrackers.org. We've got specials, we've got classes running all the time where we go into incredible depth on how to do this and other problems that you're going to face. And just hit me up, send a message if you have any questions about anything. I'll try and respond to the comments below, and otherwise be what help I can in your GMAT journey. So thank you.